I'm sure she doesn't need any introduction because all of us see her on prime time in Times Now. We have seen her grilling those at the helm of affairs and not sparing anybody. And she is certainly an icon and a role model for a lot of youngsters. And we are indeed privileged to have you here, Navika. It's indeed an honor for us that you are here. And this is the first orientation session, and we are beginning this orientation program from today. We have lined up very eminent speakers, and we begin with Navika. And I would like to, for her information, I have already told her about IIMC, but as you are aware, we at IIMC are India's premier media training institute, and most importantly, we prepare global journalists with strong Indian roots, and that is what is our USP. Our journalists, we have included not just for our mid-career journalists from, I would also like to avail this opportunity to welcome the mid-career journalists from developing countries who have joined us in this program. The Office of Profit was a story exposed by Navika Kumar as a first television story in 2006, which finally led to Mrs. Sonia Gandhi resigning from her position as MP and contesting elections again. Navika has also done stories on 26 Supreme Court judges taking free MTNL mobile phones in return for allowing MTNL to put an antenna on the Supreme Court premises. A direct conflict of interest as the Supreme Court was hearing cases against the company at that time. Hello, Your Lordship was a story that appeared in the Indian Express and led to all the Supreme Court judges returning their phones. Navika also uncovered the CWG scam in 2010, the 2G scam, and has also done stories on land ghotalas of Lalu Yadav and Mayawati. She has also been interviewed several senior political personalities, including Prime Minister Modi, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley, and former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, among others. Navika has also represented her channel at several multilateral fora like ASEAN summits, BRICS, WTO, United Nations General Assembly, and Commonwealth. She brings with her experience of reporting on these multilateral negotiations. Friends, today she is going to talk about journalism with a mission on a day when we are remembering Bal Gangadhar Tilak. So, I have the honor of presenting to you Navika Kumar.
Suresh has been a friend, a colleague, and somebody we've looked up to, and it's a great honor to be here. I was telling him, I would actually want to be with you there because I've never done a journalism course. So actually would like to apply with all of you for a journalism course in a premier institution like the IIMC, because I don't have the advantage of training formally for a journalism course. I've taken where life has taken me, but it's all happened, and I still feel I'm not somebody to give updesh here, and he's set a very, very tall example for me, Bal Gangadhar Tilak. That's a very, very tall example that he set here. So if that's anything to go by, I think you and next several generations and we and my senior generations will all continue to strive and strive and strive, and just hope to achieve maybe 1,000, 1 millionth of what that level was. So we'll keep trying, at least we'll keep the flag flying high. So I welcome all the international journalists who are here and all the new batch of journalists or budding journalists who are stepping into this field, as I thank all the senior people on the dais here, your faculty here who are going to show you the way. I'm going to tell you just life as it has been for me through my experiences. As I said, I have no formal training in journalism, but I've been somebody who's learned on the job, and it's a process I don't think should ever stop for anybody. Even today, I continue to learn every single minute of the day, because every day is a new learning. And any of you who've watched my show will understand that I heard Mr. K.G. Suresh very carefully when he said there is a clinical psychologist here. Many people feel we should have one on the panel every night at 9 p.m. for the anchor and for the panelists. So maybe I can make friends with you and have you consulting some of our panelists and some of the anchors, because there is this huge ideology war that is playing out. So is ideology new to India or new to any country? Is it new? Is it just happening now? What do you think? Have you just discovered ideologies and the various strains of ideology? No? No. It's as old as our country and our history. There have been different ideologies, so what's the big deal that we are making about these different ideologies? So what I want to tell you really, when you are a reporter and a reporter with a mission, what's the mission of a reporter? The mission of the reporter is just one: to separate the facts from the fiction. That's the one mission of the reporter. What are facts and what's the fiction? Yes, there is need for opinion, but first the opinion will depend on the facts of the case. First, we have to get to the facts of the case. And that's how reportage has to begin. That's how the work of a journalist really begins. So let's really begin right at the beginning. When 1975 happened, and what happened in 1975? Okay. That's a reporter's biggest nightmare. When there is censorship, when you're not allowed to say what you want to say, when you're not allowed to present the facts as they exist, when you're not allowed to express opinion that you may have. So when emergency happened, I was probably 8 or 9 years then, didn't understand every angle, every ramification of it, but it was something that I grew up with, because I've seen a newspaper which came with blank pages. And I often wondered and asked my parents that why would anybody waste pages? Why would there be white pages or black pages at that time? And then this discourse of we are not being allowed to express our opinion. And then cut to circa 2018, the same debate's going on. We are not being allowed to express our opinion. And it's the same question I ask all my panelists, that you are here in my studio day after day after day, week after week after week, and I invite you. And you speak against what you say is the power which is not allowing you to speak. Has anybody contacted you? Has anybody said, don't speak? Have we told you not to speak? No, we speak. Nobody can stop us from speaking. So then, where is the emergency? So, ladies and gentlemen, what I want to tell you is that we as journalists have to begin with gathering our facts. And our facts begin with going behind the people who are the decision-making people. We have to go behind the corridors of power, as I call it. Yes, there are stories, and journalism is not just limited to reporting on governments. Journalism is much wider than that. Journalism is talking about people's stories, what affects people's lives, what's happening in private hospitals, what's happening in private educational schools. But let me for a moment talk about the journalism. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. So let me start talking about the fact that let's talk about the governance, where it comes from, the systems where they originate from, which is the government. So if you're covering the government, if you're covering the decision-making process, let's start from that place. Do you buy everything that is told to you? Certainly not. The story that is told to you, in our good old days we used to say, is a press release. So what has been told to you or what the government has to say to you will come in a press release, which will be put out because that's information, so that will be put out. The story that we as journalists need to go for is the story behind the scenes. What happened in arriving at certain decisions that may have come in the press release? What's going on in those dusty files? What's going on in those dusty corridors? What's going on in those various bhavans? Maybe in states, maybe in the center, maybe in Mofussil towns, wherever the decision-making process is taking place. So we have to get our stories from there, and I will tell you how my personal experience has evolved over the years. I started covering a lot of government stuff maybe sometime around 1995. That's when the fruits of liberalization were coming in. There was a new telecom policy. There were a lot of cases. Everything was being challenged. The license Raj had gone. And we were looking at all of this. And then came this whole era of the coalition governments. Every government was there for a limited period of time, they knew. So how clearances were being given to certain mills that were being set up, whether they were paper mills, sugar mills. I started as a young reporter covering all of that overnight, how various approvals were coming in, what were the connections between the people who were getting the approvals and the people who were giving the approvals, of course at the political level. And that began the whole system of crony capitalism. It happened in the coalition governments, and then of course there were more stable governments that were coming in. And then the more important stories that I remember were, you will remember KG, when Pramod Mahajan came in. A lot of people now say and abuse me on Twitter saying I'm a Sanghi. They don't remember my run-ins with Pramod Mahajan at that point in time, when he appointed a 29-year-old young Monica Arora on the board of MTNL because she came from an RSS family. We questioned that. We questioned what were the qualifications of such a person to be on a Navratna board? Why RSS family person had to be on a Navratna board? And why the new telecom policy was being changed to favor a few? Mr. Yashwant Sinha had given a statement on the floor of the House that he had nothing to do with the flex industries. If you recall, at that time, there was a raid in some place and somebody had been arrested who was the chairman of Flex Industries, and Mr. Yashwant Sinha, I have nothing to do with him. I unearthed from Mr. Yashwant Sinha's own documents in his own election affidavit that his own house was rented to the Flex Industries chairman. And some of these associations became difficult for these politicians to explain, and subsequently they had to resign. So Mr. Yashwant Sinha had to resign, Mr. Pramod Mahajan had to resign, and then came the Congress government. And then we started doing stories on the Congress government. The point I'm trying to make is, never worry about who's coloring you with what, because ideologies may come and go, and it's become probably fashionable today to start associating any journalist who's uncovering or doing a particular kind of stories as having an ulterior motive, belonging to a certain ideology, therefore doing a story of that kind. The only ulterior motive of a journalist is to uncover the facts. The facts have no alibi. The facts are as they are. And when the UPA government came, I studied the UPA government very closely in the first 4 months of the UPA government. And I found that Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh wrote 12 letters to his ministers saying the same thing. In 4 months, he wrote 12 letters to his cabinet ministers saying, do not make any policy announcements before you get a clearance from the Prime Minister's office. 12 letters in 4 months. Which means on an average, every 3 weeks a letter was going. Every 20 days a letter was being written. Remove the weekends from there. Every 12 days, the Prime Minister was telling his own cabinet colleagues, please don't make policy announcements without checking with me. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? Would anybody want to answer? Otherwise, if a Prime Minister gives an instruction once, wouldn't it be enough? Or maybe if you have to repeat it, it's once in a year. At the beginning of a year, you reiterate your position. So, I studied it for 4 months and I did a story called Nobody's Listening to the Prime Minister. So the entire Congress came on me like a ton of bricks. How can you say that? And I proved it. I still remember I got a huge letter from the Prime Minister's office, from his media advisor at that time, who's my dearest friend today, and who's written a book on the Prime Minister, The Accidental Prime Minister. And he called me and he told me that I was insinuating too many things. And I said, here are the facts. I've put out the facts. Contest any of the facts that I've put out. He says, no facts can be contested. You are right, these 12 letters have been written. I said, okay, so if any of these facts are to be contested, no facts are. It's the conclusion that you are drawing that we are contesting. I said, conclusion is my editorial freedom. I have the editorial freedom to make that conclusion. So, and would you make the same conclusion? Or was I wrong in making that conclusion? I think anybody who saw that would do that. And then came the series. There was the National Advisory Council, if you have kept pace with what happened in 2004 and 2005, there was the National Advisory Council of which the chairperson was Sonia Gandhi. And I found a confidential, very confidential letter written by her to the Prime Minister saying that I want X, Y, Z in the budget that is coming. And not only were the suggestions made, there was a table that was attached to it, which was almost like the budget paper. It had revised estimates and budget estimates that had been forecast for the next budget. So there were suggestions, and it wasn't like saying that this was the suggestion of the party that was coming from the National Advisory Council. Maybe they were new, and therefore they did not know the nuances of probably wording their letters. But the fact was, this was on paper, and it said, this is how the budget should be. And it was written to the Prime Minister. So what will it tell you as a journalist? That the Prime Minister is being directed by an authority, which is the UPA chairperson and the NAC chairperson, who's telling him to do it in a certain manner. And then we did that story, and that created a flutter. This was the Indian Express. I was still in print at that time. And on the day of the budget, I got my hands on the reply of the Prime Minister to Sonia Gandhi saying that they would incorporate all of this in the budget. And that appeared on the day of the budget on the Indian Express lead story.
कि तुमने जो करने की ठानी है, तुमने जो अब आप आए हैं यहाँ पर, तो ये मान के चलिएगा इस पूरे 9 महीने में जब तुमने वो करने की ठानी है जहाँ बाधाएं चट्टानी है, तो अपनी ऊर्जा अपने श्रम से तुम्हें अपनी राह बनानी है। इस राह में सुंदर गांव मिलेगा। ध्यान रखना बच्चों, इस राह में सुंदर गांव मिलेगा, सुरभित शीतल छांव मिलेगा। विश्राम वहां तुम कर लेना, आराम वहां तुम कर लेना। अपनी ऊर्जा फिर से अर्जित कर, शक्ति अपनी संचित कर, फिर तुम आगे बढ़ जाना। ऊंचे सफल सोपानों पर निर्भय होकर चढ़ जाना। नीचे तुम्हें गिराने को जागृत है जो चेतन मन, उस मन को भरमाने को कितने विचलन आएंगे, इस पथरीले पथ पर चलने कितने फिसलन आएंगे। तो जो ये झूठे मानदंड हैं, उनसे कभी नहीं डरना। तुमको तो खुद के आगे है खुद को ही साबित करना, तुमको तो खुद के आगे है खुद को ही साबित करना। और बच्चों, एक बात जरूर याद रखिएगा, जो मैं हमेशा कहती हूँ इस मंच से और आज भी कहूँगी विद परमिशन ऑफ माय डीजी, एडीजी एंड ऑल एस्टीम्ड फैकल्टी मेंबर्स, कि तुम राग हो, रंग हो, राग रंग संग हो, उत्साह और उमंग हो, साज और तरंग हो त्याग और तृप्ति, गहन कल्पनाओं की सहज अभिव्यक्ति। तुम हो बूंद, तुम हो सरिता, तुम हो छंद, तुम हो कविता, तुम हो गीत, तुम गजल, तुम कठोर, तुम सरल, झूमती बहार हो, तुम प्रेम का उद्गार। कोई पूछे तुम हो कौन, कहना शब्द और मौन, काल की हो दृष्टि, तुम हो पूरी सृष्टि, तुम हो पूरी सृष्टि। वेलकम टू IIT।